Welcome to another episode of CrossTalk. My name is Kevin Tocci, and I'll be your host for this segment. What do we talk about here? We talk about a lot of the items and issues that are important to you, the two communities that we serve, Whitman and Hanson, and it could be anything from political races, upcoming events, or maybe just meeting some folks who are new to the neighborhood. This year is going to be very busy when it comes to politics and elections, not only here locally in Whitman and Hanson for those who are jockeying in place to be a candidate for select board or school committee or water commissioner, but then you also have other races like, on the county level, the state level, and the federal level. We are very privileged today that we are going to be speaking with Mr. John Deaton. He is a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, and he is here in studio with us to talk with us a little bit about his campaign and some of the issues that are not only important to his campaign, but to you, the voters here in the Commonwealth. John, welcome to CrossTalk.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege and an honor to be with you.
For folks who don't know about you, and again, we know that you ran previously for U.S. Senate. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for having me. Well, this is my second time running for U.S. Senate. I ran against Elizabeth Warren 2 years ago as a no-name candidate, meaning that no one really knew who I was. I've been a lawyer in Massachusetts for 25 years, representing mesothelioma and lung cancer victims who get that from asbestos. So I've worked with working class all my life, plumbers, pipe fitters, insulators, you name it. And that's been the privilege of my legal career. Before that, I served 7 years of active duty in the Marine Corps. I was a lawyer. I actually taught generals and admirals at Naval War College in Newport on rules of engagement and things like that. I'm a father of 3 daughters. I live in Bolton, Massachusetts with my pigs and my chickens and my dogs. And I'm a unique individual, meaning my life experience. I'm just like anyone else. I've overcome poverty, childhood violence. I had a single mother on welfare and food stamps. And I've had cancer. I overcame cancer. Debt, I grew up extremely poor, and so I know what crushing debt is like on working families. And, I decided to run, Kevin, because when people out there learn my life story, they really do realize I embody the American dream and what's possible in a great country if you give it an opportunity and you're willing to work hard. And I fear that dream is dying. And I decided, even though no one knew who I was, even though I wasn't active in politics, and I knew my chances of unseating a senator such as Elizabeth Warren would be a daunting task, I ran. And, I was the first Republican in Massachusetts in many years to get over 40%. 1.4 million people voted for me. And I wanted to build on that success because I think we need people like me, who's just one of them, who's overcome the same things that they're overcoming and struggling with, who isn't a partisan person, somebody who's like, you know what? You can keep the politics. I just want to work for the people and have a mantra. My mantra is people over politics and truth and transparency, above politics as well. And so I'm looking forward to making that case to the people, and hopefully they get to know me a little bit better than the first time.
Talk to us about entering this high-profile Senate race. What's different about this particular run, and what is your motivation? How is it different from the last time you ran?
Well, I would only run again if I thought that there was a path to victory. And I believe there is a path to victory. Senator Markey, I think, and I'm not a negative person. I'm not going to say negative things about my opponent. I think there's enough of toxic division and negativism in politics today. But he's been in Washington since 1976. That's 10 years longer than the average person's been alive in Massachusetts. It's too long. And I think that whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, 50 years is the problem, meaning you're not part of the solution. You are the problem. You may not know it, you may not realize it, but you are. And whether it's if you look at the Congress, especially the Senate, there's so many people that have been there 30, 40, 50 years. And we have some real issues that we've got to deal with. And the people that are in there, they wear jerseys. It's either a Democrat jersey or it's a Republican jersey. It's not an American one. And we need someone who just wants to go and do that. And so the race is different because this time I don't have a Republican challenger for the primary. And it means I can take my case of people over party to the independents in the state. There's 64% of the people are unenrolled.
True.
And even disenfranchised Democrats who think maybe career politicians or they're too extreme, and I think my opponent, Ed Markey, is too extreme. And I'm more of a moderate, and I think that's what we need because we keep going from one extreme to the other in this country and when it comes to politics. And my motivation is I don't want to be, Kevin, one of the last poor people to make it in this country. And I question, could a kid from Brockton or Springfield, for example, could they do what I did in my time today? And I fear that everything's so expensive that they couldn't. America, what makes America great and why I say my life is the American dream is that I was born into extreme generational poverty and living in one of the worst neighborhoods in America. But my birth and the circumstances of my childhood didn't dictate my fate. I got to dictate my fate, by working hard because I was given an opportunity. That's the America that we have to have. And I see that dying, and it scares me and it frightens me because I don't want to leave this world being like, okay, you're either born into money or you're going to be in debt the rest of your life, and there's nothing else. I don't want that. So I'm in the race to try to help prevent that.
What are the key issues in the race that you feel that you'd be able to affect change down in Washington, D.C.?
Well, the first thing would be, I think we need to elect people who know how to escape poverty, lift people up out of poverty. Right now, we have people who are creating poverty. We have 1.1 million people on food stamps in Massachusetts. Kevin, that's almost 16% of the population. Whoa. 2 years from now, if you look at the trajectory, 1 out of every 5 Bay Staters will be on food stamps. That's 20%. That is unacceptable. That is not lifting people out of poverty. And so affordability is obviously on everyone's mind. Our energy prices in Massachusetts, our electricity is 2 times the national average, twice. Our natural gas prices are 75% the national average. We are dead last in housing affordability. We are the last, 50 out of 50 states, when it comes to people being able to afford homes. We are dead last in private sector job growth. We have to have new leadership. Here in Massachusetts, the voters last election voted an audit. 72% of voters demanded that open the books and show us how, before you raise more taxes, for example, show us how you're spending our money now. How often do 72% of the people agree on something? And yet our leaders here in Massachusetts said, no, we're not going to do it. We think it's unconstitutional. We're just not going to do it. That's insane to me. And that's what happens when career politicians, they're in power for so long, they become entitled, they become arrogant, they forget that they have to answer to the people. And I'm someone who's coming in saying, hey, I got a plan on energy, I got a plan on housing, I got a plan on student loan plans, I got a plan on cleaning up Washington. I've got all these ideas that I think are fresh that can help solve our problems. And I think that's the kind of approach we need.
Yeah, you have cited Washington's reckless spending as basically driving up prices and making it harder for the families and the folks here in the Commonwealth of Mass. What are some of the things that you'd like to be able to enact if you're elected?
Well, the first thing you do, imagine this, that they never talk about balancing the budget. They never. We have $39 trillion in debt, $39 trillion. We operate $2 trillion per year in deficit. Everyone else goes bankrupt, right? In your personal life, you can't do that. The government has a magic button in Washington, and it's called print. They hit the print button. They create
Print money.
because our dollars used to be backed by gold, right? Our U.S. dollars used to be backed by the amount of gold we had in Fort Knox, for example, and on the Federal Reserve. And because gold is a scarce resource, that kept, made it more sound money. Now, when we got off in 73, Nixon took us off the gold standard.
Yep.
Now it's not backed by anything, and all they do is hit print. Here's another trillion. Here's another trillion. And it's simple economics. The more you have of something, the less valuable it becomes. They have printed so much money in the last 20 years that they have devalued the U.S. dollar, and it goes up. So this is why I explain to people, imagine you have 10 apples, each apple's worth $1, right? But now you have $20 in supply. Well, the same demand and supply is there, right? And so people are going to want to bid that apple up. And so now an apple costs more than $1 because you have more dollars. And so you have to limit the amount of dollars that you create. And so we need to balance the budget. We need to uncover all the fraud that's being spent in the government. Here in Massachusetts, the U.S. attorney, who is a Republican, and the state auditor, who's a Democrat, have both uncovered tens of millions of dollars in fraud in SNAP benefits, in Medicaid, in all of these government programs. We've seen what's happened in California and Minnesota with fraud. So we need to clean that up. Before you come to us and raise more taxes and take more of our money out of our pocket, at least show us where the money's being spent now. And so we need new leadership to come in with a fiscally, I don't even call it fiscal conservatives, I just call it common sense. If you, at home, I want everybody to understand this, at home, let's say you had 2 credit cards, and you max out your first credit card, and then you start making payments on the first credit card with the second credit card. Eventually, you don't have more credit cards. You're out, and there's a reckoning. In the government in Washington, they just make a new credit card every month, and they just keep expanding. That's coming home, and there's a reckoning, and we're seeing the reckoning now. We have, Kevin, the first generation of my lifetime. My children are not guaranteed to do better than me if they're willing to work for it and have an opportunity. That is the reverse of the American dream. The American dream used to be you were guaranteed to do better than your parents if you worked hard. Right now, parents are taking mortgages out on their home to give to their children as a down payment for a home because their children can't afford a home here. That's the reverse of the American dream, right? And we've got to fix that. And the only way we fix it is by sending politicians, elected leaders to Washington who are going to tackle that problem seriously.
You had mentioned about energy costs. Anybody who's seen their bills since the start of the winter, they have jumped dramatically, and there's different reasons for that. Whether it's because the regulation isn't there here in the Commonwealth, or it's on the federal level. I know you're somebody who's opposed to policies like the Green New Deal, but there are other technologies that can be implemented. Give me your thoughts on what can be done on the federal level to help bring down energy costs here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yeah, it's the one thing that everybody here, no matter your demographic, you look at your energy bill and you see that the supply could be, let's say it's $150, and then you look at the delivery and it's $400. And people should ask themselves, why is the delivery of the energy source 3 or 4 times more than the actual supply of the energy source? And it's because of these alternative energy mandates. Massachusetts has said we're going to implement these net zero carbon emissions by a certain arbitrary date. And when you look at your bill, you'll see EV charges, you'll see solar charges, you'll see wind charges that have nothing to do with your energy source that's skyrocketing. Well, that's not how you attack a energy problem. You attack an energy problem not by picking an arbitrary date and saying we're going to go net zero by 2050, even though your infrastructure can't handle it. You take a common sense approach and you say, you know what, we're going to use natural gas, we're going to use solar, we're going to use onshore wind, and we're going to use nuclear. I'm a big proponent of nuclear energy. The problem with someone like Ed Markey is he's been in office so long, he thinks of the 70s and the 80s when nuclear was like this major plant. It would take hundreds of acres. Now a small modular reactor can power 300,000 homes by itself, and it takes less than 2 acres. It's new technology, and it's carbon free, and it's 97% efficient. It would drive down the costs. We could put 4 of those SMRs and power 40% of our 2.9 million residential homes and drive costs down. And so in New York, the governor there, who had similar mandates, alternative green mandates, has come out and said she was wrong. I think our governor, and I think that Ed Markey needs to have the same kind of reckoning that that's not how you do it. Our carbon emissions, Kevin, in Massachusetts annually is less than 2 days of China. You can't solve climate change by yourself, Massachusetts, and especially when China's is so much more excessive. So have a common sense approach to a global problem. Don't punish Massachusetts residents. You know what I mean?
Let's talk healthcare. Healthcare is, whether it's personally, whether it's on a municipal level, we see the cost. They went from going up annually, a couple of percentage points to now it's double digits. What can be done to help the residents of Massachusetts and any employers who provide health insurance? What can we do to help curb costs? Is there something that can be done on the federal level? And especially when it comes to prescription drug costs. Can something be done to help cut costs when it comes to picking up prescriptions?
Absolutely. One of the biggest issues facing the country, obviously, we had a government shutdown over healthcare. And I can tell you this, my opponent, Ed Markey, who is just going to say Medicare for all, which will never happen. And you don't experiment with an all government controlled system. What you do is make sure you insure the people who don't have it, and you make sure that everyone has access to affordable health care. Here's the problem, Kevin. The Affordable Care Act was never going to be affordable in this country because it allowed 3 companies, 3 vertically integrated insurance companies. For everyone out there, what I mean by vertically integrated, they control the manufacturing all the way down to the pharmacy distribution, and only 3 companies control over 90% of our entire healthcare system. That is not true capitalism. That is corporate socialism. That is crony capitalism. And those 3 companies need to be broken up so that we have more competition, because they're pushing independent pharmacies out of business. But the other problem is this complete lack of transparency. If our microwave goes out tonight, all of us could get online and we could search brands and prices and compare all across the country, but you can't do that for life-saving drugs. You can't do that for drugs you need, blood thinner or diabetes drugs or any of that. It's not allowed. And that's got to end. That's insane that we can't do that. Our prices shouldn't be $300 for a drug here when it's $30 in Canada. And the reason is these 3 big insurance companies have controlled the system. It is like these 3 monopolies that have to be controlled, and we can provide transparency. I pointed out to people, why is the cash price for a delivery of a child, a traditional birth, costs $5,000 to $6,000, but if you go through insurance, it's somewhere between $35,000 and $50,000. That's insane. It's because of all the bureaucracy within the insurance industry. So you break them up. We had this problem back in the Gilded Age, and Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, came in and he bust the trust. He took on the oil barons and the railroad tycoons. He broke those monopolies up, and it allowed more competition. Competition drives prices down. So doing that and including 100% transparency on drugs, expanding telehealth, for example, where people in rural areas can receive telehealth from other doctors, even from other states, that would solve a lot of our pricing problems as well.
Talk education. Folks can be critical when it comes to school choice, especially when it comes to funding that is being diverted from public schools. I know that you're a big proponent of vocational training. What role should the federal government play versus the state when it comes to shaping educational policy?
Well, listen, one thing we have to understand is one size doesn't fit all. And what Massachusetts is necessary doesn't necessarily mean it's the same for Alabama, right? And so there is a need to allow the states and the local communities have a say in their education for their children. So I do favor options for parents. I do favor that the funding for the kid can follow the kid. There are charter schools and things like that that do work, but we can't have this one size fits all. At the same time, we can't go from one extreme. You know, that's the problem we have in the country. We elect a new president from a different party, and they go from one extreme because of political agendas. And then we reject that extreme, and then we go to a different president, a different party, and then that president maybe goes too far on all these issues. And education is one. Do we go from, you know, excessive bureaucracy to Department of Education to we're just going to completely abandon and abolish the Department of Education and just give the money to the states? There's a happy median in there that we have to find the balance to.
Okay. Let's talk, we're talking domestically with a lot of these issues. I want to kind of get your take on foreign policy. Right now, at the time of our conversation, we're seeing a couple of different wars between Ukraine and Russia. We are engaged with Israel with a war against Iran. Give me your thoughts in regards to how vocal you would be, or how active would you be as a U.S. Senator when we have crises like this taking place, and reassuring the residents of Massachusetts, you know, as to what your stance is on such issues.
Yeah, I would be very consistent, and I would never put party politics over America. And I'll give you an example. Ed Markey said that President Trump's strikes on Iran were unconstitutional, illegal, because he didn't get permission from Congress. And I would respect that opinion if he had said the same thing when Barack Obama bombed Libya for 7 months, when Bill Clinton bombed Kosovo for months, when Joe Biden went and bombed Syria and Yemen, and he didn't say anything. Just be consistent. The president has the authority for limited military strikes. It's like the air campaign. But talks of troops on the ground is a different category for me. If President Trump were to, and I fear that we may be headed that way, to be candid. I fear that this is coming. But if you put troops on the ground and you try to take Karg Island, which controls the Strait of Hormuz, you have to make the case to the American people, and you have to seek congressional authority for Congress to do it under the War Powers Act and the U.S. Constitution. And so that's where I certainly would be the most vocal. You don't put troops on the ground and get us involved in another potential Iraq situation without the American people knowing why, and Congress doing its job and authorizing the funds to do that.
We have less than 5 minutes left in our conversation. Flies when we're having good conversation.
Absolutely.
Is there something we haven't touched upon in during our conversation whether it's an issue that you are, you're very vocal about, or maybe it's something we've talked about, but you want to kind of reiterate or maybe add additional information to.
Well, I appreciate it. What I want people out there to know is that what separates me from the other politicians running is that I don't wear a jersey called a Republican jersey or a Democrat jersey. I wear an American jersey. And, the difference between me and Ed Markey, he's a proud Democrat. I'm a proud American. And I want people out there we have to get back to voting for who the best candidate is and not get blinded by party politics and partisanship. I tell everyone out there, you have so much more in common with your neighbor who voted differently than you than the career politicians who are dividing us. You worry about taking a vacation. You worry about your 401k plan. You worry about being able to afford college for your children. You worry about the same things that the guy or the gal down the street who voted differently than you. Not the career politicians. It's career politicians, both Republican and Democrat, who have sold us out. And we just need, I would just want them to know that that's what separates me. There are going to be elections in this country this year, across the country, and I assure you that there'll be some where I favor the Democrat over the Republican. And I'll be vocal about it. Even though I'm running as a Republican, if there's another Senate race across the country, you take someone like Lindsey Graham, I probably would favor the Democrat over Lindsey Graham, who's a Republican. I think that's how you got to approach it, so that when they go to vote, don't vote the party, vote the person. And I think that against Ed Markey, I'm the better candidate because I'm not running against things, I'm running for things. And I'm not running just because Ed is 80 and been there since 1976. I'm running on these solutions that we've been talking about.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Before I ask you for your campaign information. Proponent for term limits?
I am. That's a huge example of why it's called public service, not self-service. 2 terms is all that a senator needs. You get 12 years to try to make change, and if you can't, you step aside and let someone else do it.
Folks want to find out more about you. Maybe they want to get involved. Maybe they want a lawn sign. How can do any of the above?
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's JohnDeatonForSenate.com. It's all spelled out, JohnDeatonForSenate.com. If you can donate, please. I got to raise money to get this message to people. But if you can't donate and you want a yard sign or you're willing to help knock on some doors, get involved, I just want everybody to know that change doesn't begin by winning an election. It begins by believing that you can win an election. And I believe that there's enough people who want a common sense person to just go to Washington and try to do a good job.
We want to thank you for being a guest on CrossTalk.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You got it. We want to thank you for tuning into a program like this, CrossTalk. We try to do our best to bring you guests that are compelling, and that is going to better educate you as a voter or a resident of Whitman and Hanson. We thank you for tuning in to WHCA and all the programs that we offer. Until our next conversation, have yourself a great day.